Good day everyone. Jerry Bridges writes this: many Christians have a basic desire to live a holy life, but have come to believe they simply cannot do it. They have struggled for years with particular sins or deficiencies of character. While not living in gross sin, they have more or less given up ever attaining a life of holiness and have settled down to a life of moral mediocrity with which neither they nor God are pleased. Now, this is sadly true of many Christians today. They are functioning below their spiritual potential, and the reason for it is this. When it comes to practical holiness, we misunderstand what Christ has done for us and what we need to do. We don't get the balance between our potential to resist sin and our responsibility to resist sin. Therefore, it is important to know the provision God has made through Christ to live a holy life and the responsibilities He has given us to live a holy life. Let's firstly look at understanding the provision God has made in Christ to resist sin. To know the provision God has made in Christ requires that we understand a very important fact or reality, namely, we died to sin. Listen to Romans 6 verse 5 to 7. For if we have been united with Him in a death like His, we shall certainly be united with Him in a resurrection like His. We know that our old self was crucified with Him in order that the body of sin might be brought to nothing, so that we would no longer be enslaved to sin. For one who has died has been set free from sin. Note two observations about these verses. Number one, our dying to sin is because of our union with Jesus. It is not something we do, but what Christ has done. Number two, this is a fact, whether we realize it or not. All who are united to Christ died to sin. What is the meaning of being dead to sin then? It is not that sin is unable to touch us, but that sin has no more dominion over us. We were born into the kingdom of darkness, where we all were slaves of sin. But in Christ, we are now saved into another kingdom. We are now under a new king, in another kingdom, in another realm of authority, as Colossians 1 verse 13 to 14 teaches. He has delivered us from the domain of darkness and transferred us to the kingdom of His beloved Son, in whom we have redemption, the forgiveness of sins. In Christ, we are set free from being slaves of sin. So the question then is, why do we keep on sinning? Well, because of these three reasons. Number one, our residing sinful nature, the flesh. When one country are taken over by another country, very often there is still a resistance that is trying to overthrow the new governing authority. That is how our flesh is. Secondly, because of our engraved sinful habits. We are born sinners, and we have been practicing how to sin up until we died with Christ, up until we came to salvation and conversion. These old habits must go, but old habits die hard. We very easily fall back into how we are used to respond to certain circumstances and people. And lastly, because of the corrupted world system we live in. We are still in this world with all of its sinful practices on which our flesh loves to feed. And it tempts us to revert to our old man, our old sinful habits. Therefore, we need to obey Romans 6 verse 12 to 13, which says, let not sin therefore reign in your mortal body to make you obey its passions. Do not present your members to sin as instruments for unrighteousness, but present yourselves to God as those who have been brought from death to life, and your members to God as instruments for righteousness. Therefore, in the second place, let's quickly look at understanding the responsibility that we have to resist sin. You see, we must make no provision for the flesh. We need to walk in the light, exposing our own battles with sin and seeking accountability. We must put off the old habits and practice new habits of obedience. We need to exercise strict self-control over our bodies and our fleshly desires. And lastly, we must not partner with the world and try to be in fellowship or friendship with the world. In closing then, we are no longer slaves of sin. And God has provided for us in Christ the ability to stand and say no to sin. May we therefore be holy as He is holy. Amen.